Hey guys, sebchoof here. Sorcerer is a shockingly good class. Okay guys, please settle down. It's an amazingly good class for beginning to endgame players because of its high base stats and its iconic ability. You press space and it sends a surge of electricity throughout your enemies. It's got a higher base vitality than most other classes, so you can be bad and its natural healing will have you covered. It also has a higher base speed than most other classes, so you can leave the shitter wizards in the dust. And don't get me started on how wise this class is. However, the most important thing that people know this class for is for its ability to clear like no other. Hold on, I'm gonna sneeze. Oh shit. You'll be shocking enemies into submission even more effectively than Hassan does to his dog. In this video will show you how to step by step create a godly perfect sorcerer from the very beginning to the very end. Before you start playing, I strongly recommend turning your particles to high, because it more effectively shows how your ability behaves and if you're even hitting it. Another big tip is to play on US East 2 and always join the fullest party you can, so that you can call dungeons to the realm and also your party to make them faster, and you're definitely not gonna leech, right? Jokes, the hardest way to play the game is by playing solo, so don't be a masochist like me. First things first, like I always recommend for brand new characters, find yourself a spider den. You can do this most effectively by going to the lower forest area and searching for red spiders and the orc kings. The great thing about the spider den is that they give you a good amount of XP. You'll find yourself decent gear to start your character off. It gives you healing consumables that you can slot into your quick slot alongside your normal HP pots. And it's got a badass Terraria Easter egg reference that you'll never see because it's so rare. It's a great idea to find another spider den to refill your spider icons whenever you use them. If you're a newer player, this will probably be happening often, and it's worthwhile because it will make you a lot safer and probably save your life a couple of times. After you get at least level 10, you must set up camp in the Haunted Hallows biome. You're gonna be here for a while. Before I go into the specific goated items you can get here, first of all, let me tell you, obviously pick up higher tiered items. You can probably guess that a tier 6 staff is gonna do less damage than a tier 7 staff, but also keep your eye out for Morning Stars, the alternative sorcerer weapon. They're so broken right now because they used to be super situational, meaning they rarely popped off, so people thought they were bad, but then they got buffed once through a direct damage buff, and then they received a massive indirect buff when they increased hitboxes to make Wizard more playable, and now they're just so damn busted because it's so much easier to hit all your shots, and it does a lot more damage in general. You'll be shocked at how OP they are, but you do need to be a lot closer range to hit all the shots, so it is worthwhile to keep other ones as a swap out, for when you're not as confident to get into the range that the Morningstar demands. While looking for other upgrades in your other equipment slots, remember enchants are way more OP than higher tiers could ever be, because a higher tier on your armor or ring is giving you one extra stat, but enchants can be so crazy. The best enchants that you can get are flat life regen, any mana regens, and any of the new Christmas enchants. It can also help to get loot enchants or swap out gear carrying loot enchants to get more of those beautiful pointy white bags, since you only need to swap out to them when the enemy is about to die to win big. If you're a beginner, you're best off using a health ring majority of the time, and a wizard ring when you feel safe to vaporize your enemies even faster. If your pet is weak, it can also benefit you to carry a healing ring with the best life regen enchant you can find. And if you want to be Thanos like me, and you don't mind carrying even more swap outs, you can even carry your best speed ring you can find to get you from place to place faster, like when you're rushing the dungeons we'll be talking about today. And if you can't be asked with swap outs and you're a newer player, the best out of these rings to use is the health ring. That is until you get this blatantly OP ring we'll talk about soon. Okay, so these dungeons are why you're in the Haunted Hallows. There are 3 of them holding some key items that you'll need to surge your sorcerer from the early game. The first is Mad Lab. This dungeon drops from these white ghost guys, and you might get mad at how long you have to spend in here, but trust me, it's worth it. There is at least 1 must-have item, and then another 5 great items. The item that you need to get is the Scepter of Fulmination, if you're not a perfect player at least. This is because this scepter is one of the best ways to apply slow in the entire game, not only just for Sorcerer. And slow in Realm of the Mad God is a negative effect that you can apply that can make enemies a lot easier to beat, even some of the most endgame bosses. And unlike Paralyze that every enemy in Realm is immune to, because it's a fake status effect, almost no enemies can prevent being slowed. You don't even need to be using this scepter at all times, you just need to swap to it, press space, and the enemies will be too traumatized to move properly, just like Hassan's dog. Alright, no more Hassan's dog jokes. The Scepter of Fulmination drops from the first boss of the dungeon, dungeon, where you can also find the Robe of the Mad Scientist, which is also amazing, because since Sorcerer is an ability-centric class, and not only does this robe have wisdom, which helps your ability scale, but it also has a passive effect making your ability cheaper. There's a bunch of other great items that you can get from the Mad Lab, but they require you to beat the second boss, the Horrific Creation, which first requires you to clear all the Tesla coils around the dungeon. If you're a new player and or you're playing solo and or you can't rush this dungeon, it may not be worth you doing the second boss, because it can take a lot more time, but you can get some crazy stuff, including a wand challenging the best ones in the game. Yes, that's right, this baby early game dungeon can actually get you a wand that will beat almost all wands that you will see until your character's perfect. That is, as long as you get a specific enchantment on it, then it becomes insane. But getting that enchant may also make you insane. Getting the wand alone is a bit painful, because getting to the boss takes like double the time of each Mad Lab, and then not one cycling the boss can make you cry. And if you're a brand new sorcerer and or you're solo, you most likely will be staring at this man's hot face for a while in each Mad Lab. That's not even the worst part. The Awakening enchant is damn rare. If your conducting wand has one slot, it will take 770 rerolls on average, or 38.5 thousand green dust to get the enchant. Yikes. Only one wand ends up being a better wisdom wand in the end, and that's the Dusky Catalyst, which comes from the shadows. So yeah, good luck getting that anytime soon, or maybe even ever. There is another great underrated wand that can drop from the Horrific Creation that actually outdamages the conducting wand, that is if it's missing the enchant, and that's the Abomination's Wrath. I actually prefer getting this to the conducting wand for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it has one more tile of range, 9 tiles compared to 8, and it still does more damage, and it now has a new effect that restores MP when you're shooting. Also, on top of all that, there's another 2 easy to get pieces of the set from the Tesla coils, which gives you even more stats through the set bonus. Best of all, you won't get crippling depression trying to get that enchant through failed rolls. The 2 other ST pieces that I mentioned are the Robe and the Ring, which are both super underrated because they provide a bunch of stats on their own, and if you get both the pieces from the Tesla coils, which is surprisingly common, you get even more stats through the set bonus. I actually prefer getting this combo to getting the Mad Lab robe. The last part of the set that I haven't mentioned is the scepter from the boss, and it's cause it's kind of trash, but if you do already have the wand, the robe, and the ring, it is kind of worth getting because you can swap this on when you want to rush a dungeon, and it gives you a bunch of stats that really help with rushing. Oh yeah, and if you get jebaited by an expo ring from the first boss, I'm so sorry. The second dungeon that you need to farm in the Haunted Hallows is the Haunted Cemetery, which drops guaranteed from these horse guys. This dungeon is a much more chill time. From this dungeon, you only need to get 2 items that will be upgrading later to make them absolutely insane. There's a ring called the Amulet of Dispersion that drops from the first wave boss and the last boss. This ring actually turns into potentially the best ring in the entire game, making you basically unkillable, but I'll talk about that more when we talk about farming the upgrade material. The ring on its own isn't great, but it could be your best if you didn't find the ST ring from the Mad Lab so far. Otherwise, it's just chilling in your inventory waiting to be upgraded. The second item you need to get here is the wand called the Soul's Guidance, which drops from either the second wave boss or the final boss. This wand is a great wand to get early game and has a chance to spawn flames when shooting. These flames do a decent amount of damage on their own, so it's a good idea to shoot this before bosses spawn or while they're invincible to stack up damage for when the boss is damageable. They also have a chance to curse enemies, but it happens at the end of a flame's life, then it travels in a random direction and then explodes, so good luck cursing on purpose. When upgrading the wand later, it just becomes a much stronger version and potentially the best wand in the entire game, which you'll see is surprisingly easy to obtain. Bad thing about Soul's Guidance and its upgrade compared to other wands is you need to be within a 6 tile range for the spirits to hit to reach the wand's full potential damage wise. Otherwise you're better off using a conducting wand or Abomination's Wrath early on, and a laser pointer or Dusky Catalyst later, if you're a bit of a chicken. That's it for the cemetery. Last dungeon you want to farm in the Haunted Hallows is the Snake Pit. This dungeon has a chance of spawning from these dog dudes. From here, what you want is one item, and it's called the Wand of the Bulwark. No, I'm not trolling. Sure, from this weapon's bullet pattern, you might think this item is trash, but it's actually the very opposite. Super underrated. Just like how I said you should shoot the Soul's Guidance while enemies are not yet spawned or invincible, you do the same with this. But Bulwark does roughly 5 times the damage. It's just not as flexible because the flames travel with you, while Bulwark shots shoot in a slow, set, figure 8 pattern. But there is times when it's super usable, like the entirety of Haunted Cemetery basically, so it can be more than worth it. Plus, you can upgrade this item later, making it way stronger again. Another item you can get while on the quest for the Bulwark is the Snake Eye Ring. This is a ring that's great for speeding up your gameplay, like for rushing the Mad Lab. You just need to swap to it and use an ability and then you go zoom. Keep your eye out for treasure rooms which can spawn to the right or left of rooms, as long as there's a bit of space above that area of the map where the entrance would be, since the treasure rooms have a set entrance and size. By the way, fair warning, but there is, at the time of recording, a high chance that using a Bulwark actually disconnects you, so you might actually want to skip farming this wand and the dungeon at the moment. But I'll put a comment down below when they finally fix this, because apparently it's been an issue for months. Depending on how willing you are to item swap, you don't need to get all these items, but I recommend at the very least getting the 2 items from Haunted Cemetery and the Fulmination Scepter. Feel free to also refarm items just to get more enchantment slots, because enchantment slots can be OP. And congratulations, you made it past the early game. Your Sorcerer is now set to become a god. Now, things are getting a bit spookier as we go into the mid-game. In this phase, you want to farm 3 different items from at least 2 different biomes. First, you want to go to the very northern biome called the Deep Sea Abyss. From here, you want to find 2 different dungeons, the Parasite Chambers and the Nidarian Reef. The Parasite Chambers drops from these shark guys, and from this dungeon, you want the Scepter of Devastation. This scepter is hot. It's the highest single damage scepter in the entire game, so it's a big deal. However, this one scales with attack, so once you do get it, you want to keep your eye out for an attack set to use alongside this scepter, but you still want to be on the lookout for a wisdom set for clearing with your best tiered scepter, or the Fulmination Scepter, or the other scepter we'll talk about in a moment. You can also increase the chances of getting the Scepter of Devastation by clearing dead ends, because they have a chance to also drop from the treasure rooms that can randomly spawn in the dungeon. I should have said this earlier, but you might want to use a backpack so that you can carry more items while also being able to loot. You can get backpacks from the Battle Pass, the missions, event chests that can spawn in dungeons, the calendars, campaigns, supporting the game and just buying one you brokey, or from the bosses that spawn from the dungeon modifiers called Wanderer, Demetus, and Syndicate Takeover. The other item you want to find in this biome is called the Nidarian Rod, which drops from, and you'll never believe it, from the Nidarian Reef, which drops from these jellyfish type enemies. This dungeon can be quite rough to do. I've even seen extremely loaded characters get bonked by these tentacles. If you like, you can play this part of the video on 0.25 speed to get a good idea of how to clear this boss without taking much damage, or any damage if you have your dancing shoes on, but you really want to get this scepter because it's the best clearing scepter in the entire game. It scales well with wisdom and does more damage for every enemy it hits, and it hits a lot of damn enemies. You want to use this scepter alongside your wisdom set. Once you have both the Scepter of Devastation and the Nidarian Rod, congratulations, you have both the best abilities for Sorcerer in the game. You just need to get the best enchants on them, which is the Stat Multiplier mod, Percentage Mana Regeneration, and enchants to boost the stats that benefit your respective scepter the most. If you get the Reef Scepter before the Parasite Scepter, you can instead look for Parasite Chambers from these slime dudes in the Sanguine Forest, because at least if you're maxed mana, you can find life potions from the Sanguine Forest minions, which is most likely the stat at this point that you're missing the most. Once you have both the Nidarian Scepter and the Parasite Scepter, it's time to go to the the Carboniferous biome in search of the Lair of Draconis dungeon for the Earthen Ward wand. Now, I know I've mentioned so many wands already, but this one is also crazy, trust me. It might even be the craziest so far. It drops from the Green Dragon of Lair of Draconis, so you don't have to worry about doing the full damn dungeon each time because it is a drag. And the dungeon itself drops from this blue moth thing. This wand is crazy because it shoots 3 shots at the same time, though I mean, if you look at the crazy bullet pattern, it might be tough sometimes to hit all 3 shots. Who are we kidding? It's borderline impossible most of the time, but you can still take advantage of the 3 shots in dungeons like Moonlight Village or Oryx Sanctuary, where you can actually stand on the bosses at times and it absolutely pops off. So having this wand for those 2 dungeons alone is worth it. One of which, at least, we're going to be spending a lot of time in. But even just hitting 2 shots makes this one of the highest DPS ones in the entire game. It definitely is the highest DPS so far out of the ones we've gotten at this point. You just have to be standing a set distance from the enemy to hit 2 shots. You have to be aiming at the enemy to shoot the initial shot, and so the ring that wraps around hits it as well. Whilst farming for this wand, you may also stumble upon the Water Silk Robe from the Blue Dragon somehow. It's a great mix of damage, speed, and healing, so it will probably be your best new robe, but I personally wouldn't go out of my way for it. That's it for the mid-game. Well done for getting your Sorcerer this far. Sit back, take a deep breath, You deserve it. And while you're taking this breather, I just want to give a big shout out to those who support me the most, particularly my tier 3 subscribers on Twitch, who really carry my content. I'd be flipping burgers instead if it wasn't for these guys, so appreciate you big time. And if you appreciate videos like this, consider supporting me through Twitch, YouTube membership, or Patreon. Is it worth it? Give it some time to think about it. Okay, now, we're going into the late game, where things are potentially going to get even tougher, and we're going to start doing exaltation dungeons. But we're not even going to have to change biomes for these, by the way. So if you're up to it and brave enough, you can actually start doing some of these earlier. Firstly, we're going to be doing the Spectral Penitentiary, which drops from this Reaper dude that you can find randomly in the veteran biomes. So you can even find this guy when looking for the reefs and parasite chambers in the very northern biome. From this dungeon, we need to find 2 vials of soul extracts from the minions or bosses. It's worth keeping an eye out whether your spec pen gets the 100% minion loot boost mod, because you can just farm minions for the vials of soul extracts for almost no risks. You're gonna need 2 of these because you need one to upgrade your soul's guidance into a stronger version, and the other one to upgrade your amulet of dispersion into the most disgusting item in the entire game. This ring, man. How does it exist? Not only does this ring give you a lot of stats, too many to read out, but much more importantly, it basically makes you unkillable. It gives you invulnerability for 2 seconds when getting under 20% HP. This even triggers if you're hit by many shots at the exact same time that would normally lead you to getting insta-killed. You can see how this can be pretty broken. If you play around this ring, you basically can't die again. It does have a 30-minute cooldown. That cooldown resets whenever you nexus or change areas. So once it procs and you see that blue shield above your head, you can just nexus or leave through the portal of cowardice like the coward you are to reset it. And then you have your instant kill protection again. You just need to be careful because if a shot does too much damage that it actually skips your last 20% of HP, you die. So you can make sure beforehand on the wiki if a dungeon has shots that exceed that 20% amount. Also make sure to keep into account if you can get the curse debuff applied on yourself where you'll be taking 25% more damage from shots as well. Then it's Moonlight Village time. This dungeon drops from the mantises from the same biome. It can also drop from the Ethereal Shrine, which spawns as a white skull on the map, or the Alluring Blossom, which spawns in the Floral Escape biome as a red skull on the map, which is a neighboring biome. Moonlight Village is a silly dungeon, because technically you don't need any gear to do it. HP and regen can help you completing it, but ultimately it comes down to practice, and that's why I have 2 guides for you that you can take advantage of. I'll have them linked down below for after you finish this video. That overpowered ring we were just talking about helps a bunch here, because no shots from this dungeon will bypass that 20% health. In this dungeon, you can trigger the Petless Challenge to significantly boost your loot chances, and the more damage you deal to the bosses and the more you stay on the lantern, the higher your chance to win big. That's why the Earthen Ward and the pre-stacking with items like the Soul's Guidance and its upgrade, and the Bulwark and the Morning Stars can come in handy big time. I have a whole section in the second Moonlight Village guide that teaches you how to max out your DPS in every phase. This dungeon is also great for life potions, which is probably the last stat you need to max at this stage. From the first bosses, we really want to get the Kimono because it's great for the insane amount of stats that it gives, especially with an attack, and it does also give a strong healing passive, which especially helps if you have a weak pet. Then there's actually a second boss that has a chance of spawning after the first. It is a lot harder, but again, I've got a guide for this one, the second one, and you really need 2 items from this boss. Doing more damage to the first bosses and staying on the lantern more actually increases the chance that the second boss spawns. You can even get 0 flames during the first bosses to guarantee the second boss spawning and heavily increase the loot chances from the first bosses, but that can be tough to do without watching this guide. The 2 items that you really need to get from the second boss is firstly the material that you need to upgrade your Bulwark into a much stronger version, called the Fortitude Wand. The great thing about this wand is that you can momentarily swap to it to lay down an insane amount of shots every 15 seconds when you use your ability, which works wonders against bosses that move around a lot, like the Moonlight Village bosses sometimes in some phases. You also need to get this crazy ring called the Kaga no Hikari that gives you a bunch of stats, decreases your ability costs, and it spawns flames that can heal yourself and slow and curse enemies. It also synergizes with your robe to make your flames even stronger. There is also the Tenutsu Hanabi, which is a great scepter for clearing a few enemies, but gets beaten out by Parasite Scepter for a single target, or Reef Scepter for hitting many enemies. So it can be nice when clearing dungeons with few minions on the way, and it does also boost the damage and healing of your other flames from your other Moonlight Village items. You can also use the Ultimate alternate mode of the Umi Scepter to spawn these like stockpile things that level up your flames even more. The Scepter of Rust is also alright, especially because it can decrease every enemy's damage in the game by 10% because it applies a temporary weakened debuff, but you're still better off with the Parasite and Reef Scepter in my opinion. At this stage you're most likely 8-8, and if you haven't done yet so far, you might want to get yourself some exaltations. Yeah, we love exalting, because that's another way to bring your Sorcerer even further beyond. For attack exalts you can do Spec Pens, Moonlight Villages, or if you're finished getting the key items from both for your Sorcerer, you can get attack exalts from the Shadows, so we'll be doing those later to get the last key items you'll need to make your Sorcerer perfect. For speed exalt you need to do Ice Citadels or Occultist Hideouts, but I recommend doing Ice Citadels because they're faster and easier to find. They drop from the Yetis in the Runic Tundra. For defense you need to beat the Marble Colossus in the Lost Halls that drops from the Bloodroot Heart, the Ravenous Rot, or the Lost Sentry from the Sanguine Forest biome. For dexterity exalts you need to do Nests, and for vitality exalts you need to do the Cogbold Steamworks. For both of these dungeons you can do the advanced versions for a higher exalt rate, but also for a higher chance of death. If you find yourself a laser pointer from the Steamworks, I guess you can use it until you find the Deliverance, and then throw it in the bin. For wisdom exalt you need to do Fungal and Crystal Cavens, which drop from the Ancient Kaiju, Crystal Wormfather, Sentient Monolith, and the Adult Bane Serpent. For mana exalts you need to do the Moonlight Villages and Shadows. Don't worry about the Void, that dungeon doesn't exist. And finally for life exalts you need to do Moonlight Village, Oryx Sanctuary, and the Shadows. Okay, now for the very late game and the final items you need to get. First of all, you need to start doing Oryx Sanctuaries. You can get this dungeon after completing the Wine Cellar, after the Earthquake thing in the realm. You know what I'm talking about. These can be really hard to get normally since they require 3 different runes to open, which are items that drop from various late game enemies. Best way to get Oryx Freeze is by playing in active realms, like the ones in US East 2, also by joining active guilds or parties and trying to organize O-Freeze there. Even joining full realms and trying to organize an O3 through the public chat often works, though it's better to have a rune yourself to get things rolling and convince people to bring theirs. You can also check the Realm of the Mad God Twitch page to see if any streamers are running them. From Oryx Sanctuary, there's only one item that you really need, and that's the Vesture of Duality Robe, because it provides a stupid amount of attack for your Scepter of Devastation. Problem is that it's a rare drop from one of the 4 mini-bosses that can spawn from the dungeon, so it can be tough to even get the mini-boss, let alone the item, but it's definitely worth it. While you are grinding for that item, there are many other items you should look out for. This includes 3 other robes, the Diplomatic Robe, the Tier 15 robe, and the Astronomer's Gown, which are probably still robe upgrades for you, but ultimately you want to get the Vesture. The Diplomatic Robe can drop from another mini-boss called the Chancellor Dharma, and it's essentially a worse Vesture. The Tier 15 robe drops from O3 himself, and the Astronomer's Gown is actually kinda nice. It's probably the best of the 3, and it also drops from O3, except you make it from a material that the boss drops called the Astral Arcanist set tokens. Another 3 items that you can come across is the Collector's Monocle from Gemsbok, which is actually a great ring to use alongside the Scepter of Devastation because of the attack and HP it provides. Another ring you can find that I really like is the Battalion's Banner from Baza. It drops down a banner whenever you use your ability alongside it, which does some damage, but most importantly, it provides the damaging buff to those near it. So you only need to swap to it momentarily to give yourself the damaging buff that you're probably missing for a huge DPS boost. At least if you're a solo player like me. It's kind of a must-have for Moonlight Village if you're not done with that dungeon yet, because by the time every DPS phase starts, you can put a new banner down. Then, last dungeon, but the scariest one, is the Shadows, that drops from the Behemoth's Egg or the Avatar of the Forgotten King, from the Carboniferous biome or the Sanguine Forest biome respectively. This dungeon is a bit hard. In fact, in most people's opinions, it's the hardest dungeon in the game. However, it's worth doing because of the fact that it gives you 3 different exalts per clear and drops 2 must-have items, as well as other great ones. There's 3 bosses in the Shadows. The first one doesn't drop anything cool for Sorcerer, but the second one drops the best clearing wand in the game, because not only does it have high damage with piercing, but it decreases the cost of your ability, so you can spam the Reef Rod more, and it gives you a bit of whiz. It's called the Dusky Catalyst. Other notable items that the second boss can drop are the Gemstone, which is a great alternative if you weren't lucky enough to get the Kaga no Hikari from the second boss of Moonlight Village. You can also get the ST Robe, which is amazing amazing because it gives you 100 MP every 5 seconds in combat. You don't even have to be wearing it actively. You can swap to it to get 100 MP when you've taken damage recently. Lastly, while clearing the minions that look like they're wearing robes themselves, you can stumble upon the Mantle of Monarchy robe, which is a great survivability item that can help you through parts of dungeons that you find tough. For the third boss, the item you really want to get from this guy is the tier 14 Morningstar. I've already said near the beginning of this guide how busted Morningstars are. Well, this is the highest tier. So this is your go-to wand for Moon Knight Village and a lot of Oryx Free, when you can't stand on the bosses with earthen wands, that is. And it's also the highest DPS wand against armor broken enemies, if you can't stand on the enemies with earthen ward, of course. From the third boss, you can also get the Forgotten Crown, which is a great ring to use alongside the Scepter of Devastation because of its attack stats and other stats. And then there's the hard mode crown, which is a slightly better version, but good luck getting that one, because not only do you have to do a version of the shatters that's at least 2 times harder and longer, and not in a good way, but the item itself is so rare that it basically doesn't exist. The tier 7 attack ring is also great because it gives you 5 more attack compared to the crown at the cost of 6 dex and 60 HP. Speaking of rings that go well with the Parasite Scepter, the absolute best one that you can get that isn't even that difficult to obtain in terms of the dungeons that you have to run, but is damn rare, is called the Fractured Hanyo, and it's because you can get around 25 attack from it, giving you the power to make any enemy that you want explode with the Devastation Scepter. You can only get it from a boss that drops from the specific dungeon mods, being the Wanderer and the Syndicate Takeover. So while you're going through this run, not only should you be looking for these dungeon mods for the backpacks, but also because you want to be trying to get this insane ring. In the end, this is what you want to end up with, a sorcerer like this. You have your Parasite Scepter for the best single target clearing, and your Nidarian Reef Scepter for the best group clearing. You want your attack robe and ring to make your Parasite Scepter stronger. The best robe for attack is the Vesture, and the best ring is the Fractured Hanyo. For making your Reef Scepter the strongest, you want the best Wisdom robe and ring you can get. My favorite is the Moon Knight Village robe and ring because even though it has 8 less wisdom than the Ritual robe and the Gemstone combo, it more than makes up for it with its OP flames that you can spawn and massive amount of other stats. Make sure when you're using your Reef Scepter, you also have the Dusky Catalyst equipped for decreased ability mana cost and 5 more wisdom, making your scepter scale even more. Other ones I like to swap to depending on the situation is the Earthen Ward for basically just when I can stand on the bosses in Moon Knight Village and Oryx Free. Then I like to use the Fortitude one for pre-stacking, though you may not actually want to hold this unless they fix that damn disconnecting bug. Again, I'll put a comment down below when they've finally fixed it. I like to have the tier 14 Morningstar for all-round insane DPS, especially when the enemy has 0 defense, like the Moon Knight Village bosses and Oryx Free, when I can't stand in them, of course, and the Deliverance when I want more range or piercing, or when I want to pre-stack flames that I can move with. Then I really like to have the banner to boost my DPS almost always since I like to play solo, and I don't have someone else to give me the damaging buff. Now, I've played this game a lot, so for you most likely want to have the Amulet of Restoration, since it's bloody overpowered and it basically makes you unkillable if you use it properly. You probably also want the Fulmination Scepter for reliable slows, making even the toughest bosses in the game a lot easier. The Mantle of Monarchy is probably something else you want to swap with in times you're less confident, because it gives you an insane amount of survivability through its healing and its health. By the way, you don't have to be carrying all these items at all times. For the sake of the video, I'm pretending that you're a PPE, where you can't store things in your vault and take them out again. So depending on what you're doing, you might want to take fewer items so that you don't have a really expensive death, or at least much less so. Also, if you can't be bothered with so many swap outs, the best 5 items that you want to take is the Deliverance Wand, the Scepter of Devastation, and the Reef Scepter. Those are the only items that you should be swapping, and the Moon Knight Village robe and ring. For enchants on your abilities, you always want to take the percentage mana regen and the stat mod multiplier on your ability. Those are S tier. Otherwise, enchants that boost the stats that scale with your respective ability are second place. Ideally, the trade-off mods or relative mods will give you the most. For your wisdom and attack ring robe combos, S tier enchants you want on those are the flat life regen, the percentage mana regen, the damage resistance, and then otherwise further stat boosting is great. And for wands, you really want overwhelming strikes on all of them, except for the Deliverance wand where you want flurry of blows to spawn more flames because of your faster attack speed. Otherwise, again, you want to get the attack boosting stat mods on most of them, except for the Dusky Catalyst, which you'll be using alongside your Wisdom set and your Reef Scepter. To take your Sorcerer even further beyond, try to refarm items for even more slots, get better enchants, even get shinies if you want, and then by that point you'll be able to vaporize everyone into ashes. Thanks so much for watching. I'm not sure if the community likes this sort of video, so if you appreciate it, make sure to comment and like the video if you want me to make make more, that is. And even comment on what class you'd like to see me do a progression guide on next. Subscribe to make sure you get notified when future videos do come, and check if I'm live on Twitch, link down below, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.